The world did not fall into war in a single night. It slipped into darkness slowly, like a storm forming on the horizon. In the early 1930s, Germany was a nation suffocating under humiliation. The Treaty of Versailles had crushed it, its army dismantled, its economy broken, its people starving, factories silent, families desperate, a proud nation brought to its knees. And in that desperation, a dangerous voice found an audience. Adolf Hitler, a failed artist, a bitter veteran of the First World War, a man whose words could ignite crowds like wildfire. Germany was desperate enough to listen. The streets of Munich filled with angry marches, red flags, and promises of a stronger future. People didn't realize that future would become one of the darkest eras in human history. By 1933, Hitler rose to power, not with tanks, not with war, but with speeches, propaganda, and broken promises repackaged as hope. He rebuilt the military in secret. Factories once dead now roared back to life building planes, ammo, tanks. Children trained in youth camps. Posters everywhere said, Ein Volk, ein Reich, ein Führer. One people, one empire, one leader. Europe watched nervously. Some were scared. Some were blind. Some were too tired from the Great Depression to care. Then came 1938-39. Germany swallowed Austria. No shots fired. The world protested, quietly. Then Germany demanded the Sudetenland from Czechoslovakia. Europe gave it up to avoid war. But Hitler didn't want peace. He wanted revenge and expansion. Then came August 1939, the shock of shocks. Germany signed a non-aggression pact with the Soviet Union. Enemies on paper, partners in secret. And hidden inside that pact was a horrifying agreement. Poland would be cut in half like a piece of meat. Europe felt the air thicken. Everyone knew something terrible was coming, but no one could predict the scale. On September 1st, 1939, when the sun rose over Europe, German tanks rolled into Poland. Stuka bombers screamed from the sky. Villages burned. Cities shook. People ran without knowing where. World War II had begun. The world changed forever that morning. The storm had finally broken. When Germany invaded Poland, the world expected a slow, trench-style war like WWII, a grinding, muddy, miserable conflict. But Germany had prepared something entirely different, something terrifyingly fast, something the world had never seen. Blitzkrieg, lightning war, a strategy designed to shock, overwhelm, and destroy the enemy before they even understood what was happening. It worked like a deadly machine, every part moving with ruthless precision. 1. Panzers break the front lines, not slowly, not cautiously, but at full speed. Tanks charged through weak points, slicing armies apart. 2. Stuka dive bombers scream from the sky. Their sirens, Jericho trumpets, created pure terror. A psychological weapon. People froze as the sound ripped through the air. Bombs followed seconds later. 3. Motorized infantry race in behind. Soldiers in trucks, motorcycles, armored carriers. No more long marches. No waiting. Just speed, speed, speed. 4. Communications chaos. Enemy phones cut. Radios jammed. Commanders blind. 5. Surround, smash, move on. Blitzkrieg didn't fight every enemy soldier. It bypassed them, surrounded them, crushed them in pockets called Kessels. Poland fell in just 27 days. Europe was shocked. France had the largest army in Europe. Britain had the best navy. But neither understood this new kind of warfare. They thought Germany would attack slowly. Instead, Germany moved like a thunderstorm. By April 1940, the Blitz hit Denmark. The country surrendered in 6 hours. the shortest war in modern history, then Norway, then the Low Countries, Belgium, Luxembourg, the Netherlands. Panzers rolled through forests people said were impossible for tanks. German engineers built bridges overnight. Pilots flew hundreds of missions a day. The world saw something horrifying, a modern army operating with machine-like coordination. Britain's newspapers shouted, "Blitzkrieg is unstoppable." France prepared for a long war behind the Maginot Line. But Blitzkrieg didn't knock on the front door. It broke through the back. A storm was heading straight for Paris, and the world's strongest nations realized they were completely unprepared. In May 1940, the Germans did something the Allies believed was impossible. They went through the Ardennes forest, a place so thick, so rugged, so narrow. French generals said, "No tank can cross this forest." But the tanks did, and behind them came thousands of vehicles, artillery, engineers, supply trucks, motorized divisions, an entire army threading through a map that looked like a wall. For France, it was the beginning of a nightmare. The Meuse River, the moment everything broke. On May 13th, German forces reached the River Meuse near Sedan. French defenses were strong, but Blitzkrieg wasn't about strength. It was about speed. Stuka dive bombers attacked first. For hours, not stopping, not slowing, just wave after wave, hammering bunkers, trenches, gun positions. French soldiers later said it felt like the sky was falling. When the smoke thickened and the ground shook, German engineers rushed forward, laying pontoon bridges under fire. Panzers rolled across. The French line, the line meant to protect Paris, collapsed in a single day. The Allied armies are trapped. Belgium fell. The Netherlands fell. Luxembourg fell. The German armored spearhead raced toward the English Channel, cutting the French and British armies in half. Soldiers who had marched east to help Belgium were suddenly surrounded from behind. Confusion spread. Commanders did not understand the speed. Radio messages conflicted. Orders came too late. It was chaos on a continental scale. The miracle of Dunkirk. By late May, over 300,000 Allied troops were trapped at Dunkirk. German forces closed in. Everyone thought it was the end. But the British launched Operation Dynamo, one of the greatest evacuations in history. Warships, fishing boats, lifeboats, private yachts, anything that could float crossed the channel again and again to rescue soldiers. Smoke, fire, constant bombing, yet thousands escaped. It was not a victory, but it was a lifeline. Paris falls. On June 14, 1940, German troops marched into Paris, the city of lights, the heart of Europe, silent under occupation. The French government surrendered shortly after. In just 6 weeks, one of the world's strongest armies was crushed. Newspapers across the world wrote the same headline. France has fallen. Hitler's Germany now controlled nearly all of Western Europe. But in the distance, across the sea, stood one last enemy, Great Britain. The battle for Europe was not over. The battle for the skies was about to begin. After France fell, Hitler believed the war was nearly over. Britain stood alone, isolated, outnumbered, and threatened with invasion. Germany prepared Operation Sea Lion, the invasion plan. But one thing stood in Hitler's way: the Royal Air Force. To invade Britain, Germany needed complete control of the sky. Hitler expected the RAF to collapse in a few weeks. He was wrong. The fight for the skies. Summer 1940. The Luftwaffe launched the largest air assault the world had ever seen. Thousands of bombers and fighters crossed the channel daily. Their targets: airfields, radar stations, factories, cities, anything that could break Britain's will. But Britain had something Germany underestimated: the RAF, and the men Churchill would call the few. Young pilots, some barely 19, flying Spitfires and Hurricanes, outnumbered, exhausted, losing friends every day. Yet they kept flying, every morning at dawn, every afternoon in burning heat, every night with searchlights sweeping the skies. A constant, brutal, never-ending battle. Radar, the secret weapon. Germany didn't know Britain had a secret advantage. Radar. Towers along the coastline detected incoming German aircraft long before they arrived. Because of radar, RAF fighters launched exactly when needed. No wasted fuel, no surprise attacks. Every German movement tracked. It was the first war where technology became the deciding factor. The Blitz begins. After failing to crush the RAF, Hitler changed tactics. He ordered massive bombing raids on British cities, especially London, night after night. For 57 nights straight, bombs rained down. Fires burned across the city. Homes vanished. Thousands died. But Britain did not break. People slept in subway stations. Firefighters worked until collapse. The spirit of defiance grew stronger. Churchill said, "We shall never surrender." The turning point. German losses mounted. The RAF remained alive. Hitler grew impatient. By October 1940, Germany realized something shocking. Britain could not be defeated from the air. Operation Sea Lion was postponed, then quietly canceled. It was Germany's first major defeat of the war. The skies belonged to Britain. The invasion had failed. Why this battle mattered. If Britain had fallen, the U.S. could not use it as a base. Germany would control all of Europe. D-Day would never happen. But because Britain held strong, the war continued. Soon, a new front would open. In the cold, endless fields of the East, Germany was preparing for the biggest invasion in human history, Operation Barbarossa. By May 1940, Europe was already trembling. Everyone believed France, with its massive army and the famous Maginot Line, would stop Germany. But Germany had a plan no one expected. The storm begins. On May 10, 1940, Germany launched a sudden, lightning-fast invasion through Belgium and the Netherlands. The Allies rushed their best troops forward, thinking this would be a repeat of World War I. But they were wrong. While the Allies moved north, Germany sent its main attack through the Ardennes forest, a place the French believed tanks could never pass. They were wrong again. Blitzkrieg unleashed. German tanks burst out of the forest like a flood. Their speed shocked the world. The French lines collapsed within days. Cities fell in hours. Communication broke. Chaos spread. For civilians, the sound of aircraft engines became terror itself. The Luftwaffe attacked roads filled with refugees running for their lives. The trapping of the Allies. By May 20th, German armored divisions reached the English Channel. The entire British expeditionary force and hundreds of thousands of French troops were surrounded. The Allies were trapped, cut off, hopeless. This led to one of the most famous moments in history, Dunkirk. France falls. Paris was declared an open city to avoid destruction. On June 14, 1940, German troops marched into Paris without a single shot. France surrendered shortly after. Europe was now almost completely under Nazi control. Hitler stood at his peak, but the war was far from over. After France fell, Hitler's gaze turned west. Britain stood alone, the last major obstacle between Germany and total control of Europe. But conquering Britain would not be like marching into Paris or Brussels. The English Channel separated them, and above Britain, the skies were ruled by the Royal Air Force. RAF. At the Luftwaffe strikes, summer 1940, thousands of German planes crossed the channel daily. U-87 Stukas, Messerschmitt Bf 109S, Heinkel bombers, all flying in coordinated waves designed to crush Britain's defenses. Their targets were precise: airfields, radar stations, aircraft factories, communication hubs, cities to break morale. The RAF, vastly outnumbered, scrambled to meet them in the skies. The few, young pilots, some barely 19, took to their Spitfires and Hurricanes. Every flight could be their last. They flew relentlessly, day after day, night after night. Churchill's words echoed through the nation. Never in the field of human conflict was so much owed by so many to so few. It was not just technology or numbers that mattered. It was courage, skill, and sheer determination. And the Blitz begins. Frustrated by RAF resistance, Hitler shifted tactics. London and other cities were bombed relentlessly. Smoke filled the streets. Buildings crumbled. Thousands died. Yet the British did not surrender. The people carried on. Firefighters battled infernos. Children slept in underground shelters. The nation's spirit became unbreakable. The turning point. By October 1940, German losses were mounting. The RAF remained strong. Operation Sea Lion, Germany's planned invasion, was postponed indefinitely. The skies above Britain were no longer the Luftwaffe's. They belonged to the defenders. Europe had witnessed the first major defeat of Hitler's forces. Aftermath. The Battle of Britain proved one undeniable truth. Even a lightning-fast army could be halted by courage, strategy, and resilience. Germany's next great challenge lay in the east, the vast expanse of the Soviet Union, where another storm awaited. June 22, 1941. The largest invasion in human history had begun. Germany unleashed Operation Barbarossa, striking the Soviet Union with nearly 3 million men, 3,000 tanks, and thousands of aircraft. The Eastern Front stretched over 1,800 miles. Mountains, forests, rivers, and endless plains became battlefields. Millions of soldiers and civilians were caught in the storm. A Blitzkrieg in the east. German panzers tore through. Soviet defenses with the same terrifying speed used in France. Air support and mechanized infantry worked in perfect coordination. Entire Soviet divisions were encircled and annihilated. Villages and cities fell under relentless bombardment. Railways were destroyed. Supply lines cut. It was war on an unimaginable scale. The Soviet winter looms. Initially, German advances were unstoppable. Moscow seemed within reach. But as summer ended, winter approached. Rivers froze. Snow blanketed the forests. The Wehrmacht was not prepared for the harsh Russian winter. Equipment froze. Soldiers suffered frostbite. Fuel and food shortages crippled operations. The Soviet resistance. The Red Army, though battered, refused to collapse. New divisions arrived from Siberia. Snipers, partisans, and scorched earth tactics slowed the German advance. Every city turned into a fortress. Every forest became a trap. What seemed like a lightning victory stretched into months of attrition. The turning point. By the end of 1941, Germany had captured vast territories but had not defeated the Soviet Union. Moscow remained unconquered. Leningrad entered siege. Stalingrad would soon become the ultimate test of courage and endurance. Barbarossa had begun with a roar, but the Eastern Front would become a grinding, deadly war of survival unlike anything the world had ever seen. By the summer of 1942, Hitler's attention turned to the southern Soviet Union. Oil fields in the Caucasus were vital for Germany's war machine, but to get there, they had to capture Stalingrad, a city that bore the name of their enemy's leader and held immense symbolic importance. This battle would become the deadliest in human history. Our urban hell, Stalingrad was not a battlefield of open plains. It was a city of rubble, factories, and narrow streets. Every building, every corner, every ruin became a fortress for Soviet defenders. Close-quarters combat dominated. Snipers lay in ruined buildings. Artillery fire destroyed blocks, sending smoke and dust into the sky. German soldiers advanced room by room, street by street. Encirclement and attrition. By November 1942, the Soviet counteroffensive, Operation Uranus, trapped over 250,000 German troops inside the city. Supplies dwindled. Food ran out. Winter descended. Soldiers suffered frostbite, starvation, and constant bombardment. For months, every day was a fight for survival. Every night, men huddled in cellars, listening to the screams of those around them. Heroism and horror. Stalingrad produced acts of unimaginable heroism. Soldiers fighting until ammunition ran out. Civilians aiding the Red Army under fire. Generals planning counterattacks while under siege. Yet the cost was staggering. Over 1 million soldiers dead. Thousands of civilians killed. The city almost entirely destroyed. The turning of the tide. By February 1943, the Germans inside Stalingrad surrendered. It was the first major defeat for Hitler's forces on the Eastern Front. Stalingrad became a symbol of resilience and human endurance. It marked the beginning of the relentless Soviet push west, signaling a turning point in the war. June 6, 1944, the day the world waited for, the day the tide of World War II truly began to turn in Western Europe. Operation Overlord, the Allied invasion of Normandy, was a meticulously planned assault on Hitler's Atlantic Wall. Thousands of ships, planes, and soldiers would storm heavily fortified beaches under relentless fire. The assault begins. At dawn, Allied forces faced a wall of German defenses, machine guns hidden in bunkers, barbed wire and mines covering every inch of sand, artillery raining fire from cliffs above. Soldiers ran through chaos and hellfire, bullets cutting the air, explosions tearing through the surf. Landing crafts capsized, soldiers drowned, yet others pressed on. Airborne and paratroopers. Behind enemy lines, paratroopers and glider troops landed to seize key roads, bridges and towns. Confusion, friendly fire, and chaos dominated their missions. Yet they held critical positions that allowed the beach landings to succeed. Planes roared overhead, dropping bombs and strafing German positions. Breaking the Atlantic Wall. Despite staggering losses, the Allies advanced. By nightfall, they had established a foothold. Beaches were secured. The push inland had begun. The courage, determination, and sacrifice of these soldiers changed the course of the war. The impact. D-Day marked the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany in the West. German forces forced into retreat. Paris liberated in August 1944. Allied forces pushing eastward toward Germany. Every man on those beaches carried not just weapons, but the hope of a world freed from tyranny. April 1945. The war in Europe was reaching its final brutal crescendo. Berlin, the heart of Nazi Germany, became the ultimate battlefield. Soviet troops poured in from the east. Allied forces advanced from the west. The city was surrounded, bombed, and engulfed in fire and smoke. Street by street, every building was a fortress. German soldiers, exhausted, outnumbered, and desperate, fought fiercely. Civilians were trapped in basements and shelters. Every street corner became a battleground. Every ruin a sniper's nest. Tanks rolled through rubble-strewn avenues. Artillery shook the city. Planes patrolled the skies. Hitler's final days. In his bunker beneath the city, Hitler realized the war was lost. Delusions remained, but reality closed in. On April 30th, 1945, Adolf Hitler died by his own hand. The Third Reich, which had plunged the world into darkness, was crumbling. The Reichstag falls. On May 2nd, Soviet forces captured the Reichstag, raising the red flag over Berlin. It symbolized the end of Nazi power in Europe. The war in Europe officially concluded on May 8, 1945. Victory in Europe. VE Day. The aftermath. The cost was staggering. Over 70 million lives lost worldwide. Cities reduced to rubble. Nations scarred physically, economically, and emotionally. Yet, amidst the devastation, a new world began to take shape. The United Nations formed. Borders were redrawn. The lessons of World War II would echo through generations. A legacy of WWII. World War II was not just a series of battles. It was a human story of courage, resilience, horror, and hope. Soldiers and civilians alike faced unimaginable trials. The bravery, sacrifice, and determination of those years shaped the world we know today. Even as the guns fell silent, the memories, lessons, and stories of this war would never fade.